Growing up, I spent many summers in the woods of the Ozarks. I fell in love with its rich history and rolling hills at a very early age. Now these days, I call the Ozarks my home. And since moving here, I have learned that the Ozarks has a much darker and mysterious story. Join me, Blasky, as I explore these dark and mysterious legends that fills the hollers of the Ozarks. This is Ozark Mountain Lore. On today's episode, a restaurant that was once a home still occupied by its owner, a haunted castle in Springfield, and a beautiful hotel with a creepy backstory. We're going to look into the lore of three of the Ozarks' most famous dwellings: the Worman House at Big Cedar, Pythian Castle, and the Crescent Hotel. The Worman House at Big Cedar in Branson, Missouri. Currently, it houses Big Cedar's fine dining restaurant. Before it was renovated to fit such a need, it was used as a private summer home for Harry Worman and his young bride Dorothy. At the time of their wedding, Harry was 47 and Dorothy was 23, something that caused quite a stir amongst the community. She was rumored to have questionable behavior by some. While Harry worked, Dorothy would often travel to Europe with her friends. Harry grew tired of Dorothy's lifestyle and jet-setting ways and filed for divorce. After that, the mystery begins. There has been a variety of accounts that surrounds Dorothy after the divorce. One rumor that has circulated through the years was that Harry divorced Dorothy to marry his mistress, which would explain his quick nuptials to his second wife. This sent Dorothy into a tailspin, ultimately down to Mexico, where she died 2 years later of mysterious circumstances. One rumor suggests that she fled to Mexico to have an affair. During her time, she died by drowning after suffering a heart attack. The heart attack and drowning were confirmed by a news report and a news clip from the Nevada Herald in 1944. This is where things go from mysterious to spooky. Since her passing in 1944, the Worman House has experienced a series of supernatural occurrences, one of them being a semi-transparent woman seen walking or floating across the grounds at night. She's usually described as a young woman with brown hair and a white dress, much like Dorothy. Close resemblance, or just a coincidence? Some report that the spirit is very playful, much like Dorothy, often finding herself in the background of some of the photos that guests take. If you ever find yourself in the Worman House of Big Cedar, be sure to say hi to Dorothy. Making our way back north to the Queen City of Springfield, Missouri, a historic town in and of itself, known for being the birthplace of Route 66, the first ever duel between Wild Bill Hillcox and Davis Tutt, and the famous Pythian Castle, a subject of many paranormal investigations over the years. The Pythian Castle was built by the Knights of Pythian for widows and children of past members. It was constructed in 1913 for $100,000, roughly about $3.2 million in today's money. It served as a charity house until World War II, when it was taken over by the military and turned into a social club for those being treated at the O'Reilly Hospital. It also served as a dungeon for the POWs who were also being treated at the hospital. It was rumored that the dungeon was located in either the powerhouse or the laundry room. Some even say that you can still see some of the writings of the POWs on the walls today. The castle remained in the possession of the military until 1993. Pythian Castle is considered one of the Ozarks' most haunted places. There's no shortage of stories about spirits of soldiers and POWs, children who aren't there running up and down the halls, and the sounds of gunshots ringing throughout the grounds, even calls for help. One story that has been mentioned by several of those who have visited the castle is a story of a shadow person, a slender-looking man often seen in the distance or walking from room to room. Who is this shadow person? No one knows. A former patient of O'Reilly's hospital coming back for another night at the social club? Or perhaps a POW trapped in an endless loop in the afterlife? What kind of haunted place would it be if it didn't have its own ghostly presence in the lobby to welcome visitors? This spirit is one that is not often seen, but is often heard. Guests have claimed to have heard the voice of a young girl. When looking around to see who might be talking, visitors are often left puzzled by the sight of an empty room. There are a couple of other spirits that you can address by name while you're visiting the castle. One of them goes by the name of Adam, a man believed to be a soldier. What is not known is whether he's an American soldier or a POW. Another one goes by the name of Petey. Petey is a small boy who is lost and looking for his parents. Not all the ghosts who are rumored to dwell here are just wandering the halls. Some seem to have a more sinister purpose. Mr. Boots is a man that is said to roam the tunnels. He appears to people in a brown suit with a look of anger on his face. The spiritual presence at Pythian Castle is not something that is limited to just sights and sounds. For years, guests said that they have caught the faint smells of alcohol and cigar smoke throughout the halls. Perhaps it's a social gathering still happening to this day, just this time behind the veil. Finally, we travel farther south to the edge of the Ozarks. In northwest Arkansas sits the town of Eureka Springs. Known for its beauty and Victorian architecture, Eureka Springs attracts travelers from all around. Many of them stay in the famed Crescent Hotel that was built in 1884 and opened in 1886. It was constructed by former Arkansas Governor Clayton Powell. Its location was selected because it overlooked all of Eureka Springs and was even named for the mountaintop it sits upon, Crescent Mountain. Once opened in 1886, the hotel hosted several gala events filled with military officers, politicians, and other high-profile guests. The hotel was later purchased by the Frisco Railroad in 1905, and by 1908, it was turned into the Crescent College and Conservatory for young women. It remained so until 1934, when it closed its doors due to the Great Depression. This is where the Crescent Hotel's dark history begins. In 1937, the hotel was purchased by a man named Norman Baker, a self-proclaimed doctor who would con cancer patients into believing he had the cure for cancer and would convince sick patients and their families to stay at his hospital. Those who were suffering from cancer received no treatments from Baker. He would continue to drain many families of their life savings while loved ones continued to die. Eventually, the con was brought to an end after lawsuits and investigations. Baker was later sentenced to 4 years in Leavenworth Penitentiary. These days, the Crescent Hotel has been called one of the most haunted hotels in America, with countless stories surrounding the historic hotel. Starting with the Crystal Dining Room, a playful spirit can be found moving holiday decorations to suit their particular needs, as well as other furniture from time to time. Could it be a former resident of the hotel, or perhaps a married couple that was once seen by a staff member in the reflection of a mirror? If you do choose to stay at the Crescent Hotel, there are a couple rooms that you can stay in that carries a few ghostly stories. One of those rooms is room 218, a room that is supposedly occupied by a spirit named Michael, a worker who died during the construction of the Crescent Hotel. Some guests claim to have heard the voices of a man crying out throughout the room. Some even said to have seen ghostly hands reaching out at them from the mirrors in their rooms, like a ghost leaping from its own personal horror. Another room you can visit is room 419, although you may see your ghostly roommate before you even walk through the door. The spirit that is said to haunt this room is Theodora, a cancer patient assumed to have passed during her stay at Baker's Hotel. She can be seen fumbling with the keys to get into the room. Although her presence may be unnerving, she has been said to tidy up the room while guests are away. Sadly, not all the spirits roaming the halls of the Crescent Hotel are as friendly as Theodora. Past guests have been frightened by the sight of a nurse pushing a gurney down the halls towards what was Baker's old morgue, which held an autopsy table and a walk-in cooler. And years later, it was said that some had discovered jars containing things that Baker had removed from patients during surgeries. It's even been said that some have seen Norman Baker himself walking the lobby of the hotel. Some describe him as wearing a purple suit with a white shirt. Not someone you would want to meet after learning of his previous crimes. While researching the Crescent Hotel, I came across a possible suggestion for why the Crescent Hotel seems to be a haven for spirits that have yet to cross over. It has been believed for many years by those who investigate the supernatural that limestone is a collector for supernatural energy, like a storage bin for the afterlife. The Crescent Hotel sits upon a large slab of limestone, and even parts of the hotel were constructed with the same limestone. Did the builders unknowingly build a ghost trap? The Crescent Hotel has been a staple in Eureka Springs for more than 100 years. Its history is rich and extensive, but sadly, so is its lore. If you find yourself in Eureka Springs and looking for a potentially haunting experience, spend a night or two in the Grand Old Lady of the Ozarks. So there you have it, a small look into the lore that is ingrained in the history of the Ozarks. Whether you believe in ghosts, spirits, apparitions, and trapped souls, or you think this is all just a collection of stories by those with overactive imagination, visit these locations and decide for yourself. People are always brave when the lights are on. How will you fare when they're off? Coming up on next week's episode, who hasn't spent a night or two driving around with friends looking for urban legends that everybody talks about? Join me as I dive into the lore that includes a farm, a man with a hatchet, and some spooky lights just on the edge of Missouri. It's all coming up on next week's episode of Ozark Mountain Lore. Keep up to date with all things around the Ozarks at AroundTheOzarks.com and subscribe to the daily newsletter to get new episodes straight to your inbox. For even more content, follow Around the Ozarks on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to get new episodes every week.